Hey everybody, DPG, and let's get straight to today's video, which is what is Meisner training in the simplest way possible that I can explain it. Okay, I have done a full 2-year Meisner training course, and I should use air quotes when I say Meisner because Sanford Meisner is dead, and whatever his training was, it was always in a stage of flux, meaning he was always working on it and trying to improve it. And anybody that calls themselves a Meisner teacher is really lying to both themselves and to the public, because they really don't know what Sanford Meisner would be teaching today. So what we could call it is maybe what Sanford Meisner was teaching when he died. But let's get to the simplicity of it. Essentially, Meisner training, the purpose of it is to help you learn to trust yourself. Okay? It's that simple. And the reason you want to learn to trust yourself is because your own unique set of experiences and genetics and everything else that goes into making up who you are is, as I just said, unique, and nobody else possesses it in the combination that you have it. And therefore, if you can just access all that you are, that is more than enough, far more than enough to have an incredible and flourishing acting career, because nobody else has that combination. And if the more you can allow yourself to trust yourself, the more people will really respond to you, because they see what you are doing is completely phony, unfaked, that it's truthful, in as truthful as you can get in a moment that isn't really happening, at least in the sense of the play or the TV script or movie script that has been written. Okay, it's as truthful as you can be, pretending to be in a certain set of circumstances and trusting that whatever comes out of your mouth and however you respond, your facial reactions, etc., are as natural as they can be. Meaning you just go, I know what I know, and so therefore, bleh. Okay? Now, how does it get you to that ability to trust yourself? Well, it starts off with the simplest of exercises, which is basically what they call a repetition exercise. And you simply stand or sit across from somebody else, and they basically tell you who's going to speak first. And you just have to basically say one thing about that other person, generally as simple as possible. You don't want to start with an escalation. You want to start with, we don't have a history, at least in this moment. And so I'm going to say something. And the thing you'll hear a lot is, I like your shirt. Okay. And the person then takes it in, and they allow their feelings to percolate, and then when they feel ready to speak, they repeat back what you said to them. So they'll say, you like my shirt, right? It's that simple. And then what happens is, whether you're ready or not, because this is the problem with training like this, is you're going to progress through these, let's call them modules. They don't really exist as modules, but just let's think of them as modules, which are just stages in your development. And they get more and more, let's say, complex, to the point where you're writing your own scenarios. You bring them to class, and there's a set of these circumstances where one person is coming to the door and another person is home. And the person coming to the door has a goal, a need they created. They need directions to the wedding, and there has to be a certain level of urgency. And the person inside is also doing something, trying to get something done, and this person is interrupting them. And, this is a very common situation you'll see in TV shows and movies. And basically, you go through these scenarios, and they get more and more complex, because the whole time you're trying to deal now with multiple circumstances. Okay, there's a relationship now in place between you and this other person. It's specific. And there's a situation that you are coming from, which has led you to come to the door, and the person inside has their own set of circumstances. And Sometimes you're going to know what the other person's circumstances are, and sometimes you won't. Obviously, it's easier to be real, truthful, if you don't know why the person is behaving the way they are. But of course, you're going to have to get to the point where you have a script and it says what both people's circumstances are, and you have to resist the urge that you know what the other person is doing and why they're doing it, and try to not know it. But some people would argue, but you need to know it because you need to know where the scene needs to get to make the next scene or the next interaction make sense. So there's a lot of, argument inside of all of this stuff. But that's basically the situation. It's all improvised and self-created until finally, and you will be given scenes, simpler scenes that only focus on staying in the moment initially, and you will move on to more and more complex work. And it's here's another thing. Well, I don't want to get into the problems of it, but basically, you will get into more and more complex scenes, and that's basically it. That's it. Okay. So you are trying to learn to live improvisationally within predetermined circumstances. So basically, you know what's going to happen because you know where the scene's going to end up, but you need to trust your own responses in that. So you have to, even though you know the end, you can't anticipate the end in your behavior. You have to sort of forget about it. So it's very interesting. I mean, it's a little bit like a roller coaster. You can see a roller coaster and you can go, okay, well, I'm going to go up and down in these loops, but then you don't know what it's actually going to feel like until you get on the roller coaster and you go through the loop and you climb up really slowly and it's building all this tension and you're like, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? And then you're plummeting to the ground and you're like, okay, so it's a little bit like that. And in fact, that's probably a very useful way to think of Meisner training, is that you are trained to ride the roller coaster and react. But then you are also, they introduce the concept of seeing the roller coaster before you get on it, but still having, these honest reactions. So anyway, that in its essence is Meisner training. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit about the problem I have with it. And the problem that I have with it is that you can't unknow what you know. You know it. And the exercise work you go through gets more and more complicated. And so you spend a lot of your time, because you're in a teaching setting, you spend more and more of your time sort of trying to do what you have been told to do so that people will tell you you've done a good job, as opposed to really just letting go absolutely. I think this is going to depend a lot on the teacher themselves, how they respond to your work, right? If they criticize you in certain ways, and they don't encourage you enough, or they don't tell you to practice more, because I think most of this stuff, no matter how badly you start, no matter how incapable you are of being in the moment, because you're so self-conscious, which is kind of the camp I'm in. I'm very, very self-conscious and self-aware. And if you don't get somebody who gives you the right type of instruction, all you're getting is the basics, and then you're left to your own devices. So in my case, I went through all this training, but I eventually realized that this isn't going to work for me on its own, because I can't unhitch myself subconsciously from my conscious self, which is very self-conscious and like, how am I doing? I'm very manipulative, right? I'm trying to manipulate situations, trying to be clever and tricky and all that. And sometimes that works, and sometimes it just comes off as fake and hackneyed. So, you really need an excellent teacher who isn't worn out and isn't completely just committed to the exercises and thinks that's enough. That's, I would say, one of the problems is people who teach this stuff stop thinking for themselves, just like all people stop thinking for themselves when they think they've got, a course or a set of parameters that's perfect, right? That doesn't need fixing. And this is where I have a huge problem with any Meisner training, and Strasberg and Stella Adler, is anybody teaching it now keeps calling it Stella Adler and Lee Strasberg, Sanford Meisner, the method, what have you, and keeps teaching it the way it was being taught in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, or whatever. And these people, Stanislavski included, would be rolling in their graves to know that these people have basically stolen their work, because they have, and are reproducing it in the best way they know how, but they don't know really what was going on in these people's minds. And they also have abandoned the idea of trying to refine it and make it better. Okay? So you kind of need a teacher who, even if they don't choose to change the material, they need to at least put it into the context of the fact that this isn't going to work for you unless your mind is completely free, unless you are completely free to respond naturally without any hint of self-consciousness, without any thought about how you're going to be perceived by the audience, by the students in your classroom, by how much the girl or the boy that you likes your work, and all of that stuff, right? It assumes that you are perfect in terms of do this and follow the progression and you will become a great actor, because that's complete nonsense. I've seen enough people study this stuff and get nowhere by following this sort of strict, structured approach and, falling back on the name of Sanford Meisner. So that is my problem with it, essentially. And I'll just leave it at that. Okay, so that's the basics. That's how it works. And the pitfalls are that unless you have an amazing teacher who recognizes that the material is not complete and should be continually worked on, which is kind of difficult, because if they thought it should be continually worked on, they should be, rather than just going, yeah, I teach Meisner because that's easier, right? It's like having a franchise of McDonald's. I sell McDonald's burgers. Why? Are they perfect? You can't make them better? Even McDonald's is trying to make them better. So, the difference being that nobody's trying to make Sanford Meisner's work better because he's dead, and there is no sort of master franchise owner anymore. And maybe there should be somebody who continually works on it and introduces new types of Meisner burgers, okay? And, just makes it better, refines it, and makes it easier for the imperfect person, which we all are, to take this information, this structure, and make it our own. All right, guys, well, that was it. I hope this wasn't overboard and overcomplicated. And if you liked it, do like, subscribe, share. Listen, all I want to do is help you guys. So the more you can help me feel valued and like that I'm being listened to and the information I have is worth something to you, at least give me some freaking feedback, okay? Anybody who you watch on YouTube that you value, we're sensitive to, right? And even some people who are just making a lot of money, the money's great, but at the end of the day, you want to feel like you're being listened to and related to, and that you're offering some value, okay? And to me, there's nothing more valuable than positive feedback. So if you can take a moment and just give me some thoughts as to how you feel about this, I would be tremendously grateful. That's really what people are always saying, be grateful. That's what makes me grateful, is when somebody says something and gives me something to think about. How can I do better and contribute more? Because we all have a very finite, short life, and I want to do the best I can in the time I have left. I will talk to you soon. And by the way, if you want to work with me, which you should, because I'm awesome, I have classes, I have private coaching, I have masterminds, and I have courses. So just reach out, david@hackhollywood.com, or sign up to get information from me by either going to hackhollywood.com and put your name in, and you can get on my mailing list, and subscribe to the channel and keep watching, and I will talk to you soon.